If you're not taking scheduled time off, you're going to take unscheduled time off. If you're not scheduling your breaks or your recovery, you're going to run yourself down to the ground, and then it's going to take longer. Like you're either going to get injured, something's going to happen, and your heart's not going to be in the training. If your heart's not in it, it's not going to be good training.
This episode is all about mental toughness. I was joined by Dr. Rob Bell, who is a sports psychology coach. He was the mental coach for multiple winners on the PGA Tour, Indy 11, and University of Notre Dame. He worked with medalists at the Olympics, was the sports psychology coach for the 2013 USTA national champion, and has caddied over 20 events on the PGA Tour. He's also written 8 books on mental toughness, including I Can't Wait to Be Patient, Puke and Rally, and No One Gets There Alone. He's also the host of the Mental Toughness podcast. Rob shared some really interesting stories and pieces of advice. I had such a great time talking to him. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Dr. Rob, thank you so much for coming on the show.
I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to it.
I'm very excited to chat with you. One of the things that I find particularly interesting about your career and your body of work is how focused it is on mental toughness throughout your life. I know you discovered this idea early on in your life, and you've built this remarkable body of work. You've worked with pro athletes, you work with executives, you're an athlete on your own, triathlons and Ironman. You've dedicated your life to this idea of mental toughness and written 8 books about it. Why is this work so important that you've dedicated your whole life to it?
That's a good question. Early on too, it was probably the only thing, like I would wake up, I would be thinking about it, right? Like, how do we get better? How do we improve? And it was always the mental part that always intrigued me because as an athlete, like growing up, like I was the athlete that would think too much, right? I was like Sheldon from Big Bang Theory, right? I was just always thinking, and no one could ever help me out. No one, and everyone would always say, well, they'll just go away. You just stop thinking. And I was like, I was a smart athlete and I couldn't be a dumb athlete, and that was the part where it's like it just never worked. So that was like where that seed was planted. But I was always just fascinated by people that would achieve great things and what was special about them. What did they do that was different? And then just finding out about people's why, like what was the passion that was underneath that stuff. And then had several hinge moments and near death experiences. And it really just came down to, I was like, if I ever get a second chance at life, I'm not going to blow it. That was the main driving force. And so when I knew I was given a second chance, like that was really it. I know I was given a gift. I wasn't going to blow it and I was going to seize the nectar out of life. And that was the main thing I was just focused on. Like nothing else really just fired me up except performing well under pressure and then how we handle and cope with the adversity, the struggle and the setbacks in life. And so being somebody that like wasn't good at that fueled like the passion as well. And then just being a product of the product. I like putting myself in situations where, there's going to be tests. And I always say like we get the test first and then the lesson comes afterwards. And that's the way life is, right? It's not like school at all. You don't study for this test. Like you get the test and then the lesson comes afterwards. And that's where I've always felt, especially my work. It's in the debrief. It's in the reflection piece. And there's really no finish line too. That's the thing, right? There's different mountains that we'll climb, but it's always coming down off that mountain that becomes, really becomes the risky part, right? That's when most people die coming off down on Mount Everest, not going up. So I'm always fascinated just by just all of these different areas and facets of the mental game and mental toughness and mental health. And it's just always been my passion, especially when I'm going to sleep at night. It's just being able to recap the day, man. What'd you do well? What'd you learn? What do we focus on tomorrow? And just being a driven person as well, and kind of like a type 3 on the Enneagram, like just performance, so that's always led towards that creativity. And I think just the interest in being curious.
So, okay, you're type 3 on the Enneagram. It's kind of in you. Do you think, and especially because you work with athletes, you work with people that I assume are a little bit more type A, a little bit more driven, have that ambition already inside of them. Do you think that people can learn mental toughness?
Well, indeed. I think mental toughness, it's caught more than it's taught. And what I mean by that is I think there's going to be situations that present themselves that people are now forced to deal, handle, and cope with it. And it's like how well they deal with it in that moment. Do they have the base there underneath of doing, you got to be able to do whatever it takes, right? Like, but if we look at any kind of video, if you listen to any kind of coach, um, it always stops at the motivation piece. And that's just the foundation, I think, of the mental game is motivation. So put everything you want in that, right? Like perseverance, persistence. How bad do you want it? What's your why? It's really just getting motivation. And people then, the discipline is more important than motivation. Okay, that's fine. That's great. I agree with that. But it's still on that's just the foundation of the mental game. And so that's where most people like stop. But if that part is there, then what are the next layers to it? So if we're building that house, the next layer to that is going to be confidence. Like you have to have this belief in yourself. Now, people might be listening. It's like, well, I don't always believe myself. I don't either, right? But here's the thing. It's why is that the second level and not the top? Because we think that's the most important mental skill. And the reason why is because if you didn't have any belief in yourself, you wouldn't try anything at all. And so I think the belief is there in each and every one of us. It's just being able to make sure we're tapping into that and we're actively like growing that confidence muscle. So that confidence piece is like the next level. After that, it's focus. How well do we focus under pressure? And then how well can we stay focused kind of like throughout the day? And then that last part, and this is the most difficult one, is how well we refocus. I think that's the top of the house because how well we refocus, how well we let go of mistakes reveals the level of confidence that we have in ourselves. So what I mean by that is the way we focus is what builds confidence. So if I'm focused on something bad can happen, right? I don't want to be in this situation. Then I'm not going to get confidence from that, right? I'm just focused on the negative. If I'm focused on I want to be in this situation, something good can happen. I'm going to get confidence from that because now I'm focused on something good that can happen. But the refocus muscle, how I refocus just reveals the level of confidence and belief in myself. When you watch athletes, if they lose it, if they crumble, what it's really saying is that they need everything in order to go well for them to be successful. And that's just not reality, right? You have to be able to deal, handle, and cope. And that's just part of that refocus muscle, something I always struggle with, still struggle with. I need other people to help me out with that, but I know that's like a big blind spot because look, I want things to go well just like everyone else, right? But it's like it's just not going to happen. So it's how we can deal with it and how we're able to let that stuff go. So those are kind of like the skills I always look at. Like that's the mental toughness. That's how we're building that house. And we don't stay in one level. It's always static. Like some days we're going to be more confident than others. Some days we're going to be more focused than others. But it's just constantly being able to take that introspection look and be able to look inside and say, what area do I need to grow in? What area am I doing well at? And that's just always that work in progress. I always say like that, the road is always under construction and there's no traffic jam on the extra mile, right? Just keep going. It's always under construction. So hopefully that answers. Sometimes I can belabor the point a little bit, but that's why I think, look, it's caught. There's going to be these moments that happen. And as long as we can get back to, hey, what have we been learning on our journey? That's going to be help us with that. And that's where I look at, like, we all have these examples where we've overcome and have done well. Did we just forget about that stuff? Because that helps us for later on in life. I know I forget about it, but that's the importance of being able to hold on to the successes. And sorry for belaboring the point, but let's kind of get going.
No, no, I love this. In fact, I love this. I love the distinction between focus and refocus. I don't think I really thought about it in that way. And as you were talking, that kind of reminded me of one of your hinge moments that you talked about of the Olympian. It was a competition. Was it Dave versus Dan? It
Oh,
was
yeah.
two
Yep.
Olympians. And that was one of your hinge moments. Did you want to share? Because I feel like that's a really good example of the focus and refocus.
Yeah, absolutely. It kind of dates me now a little bit. Every day we get away from it, I feel like a little bit older and older. Reebok had these commercials.
That's because we're getting older, Rob. That's what happened.
I know I'm just trying to hit the pause. And when you think about it, I mean, it was like, so, I mean, again, I'm a kid, but Reebok has these commercials, Dan and Dave commercials. So you can YouTube them now, right? It's like when Reebok came out with the pump. And do you remember that one?
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's how long ago this was. So, but Reebok was, I mean, it was fascinating because it made you focus on decathlon and who watches decathlon. So it's like, now I do because I'll watch every kind of sport. Doesn't matter if it's pogo stick or marbles. Like I love watching that competition. So, but Reebok made you pick who's going to win gold in Barcelona, Spain. Is it going to be Dan O'Brien or Dave Johnson? So it makes you pick. Well, we had this little formality in the United States called Olympic trials. And that's how good we are in all sports, really. So what happened was uh, Dan O'Brien was on world record pace at Olympic trials. He gets the pole vault and he misses in the pole vault, misses 3 times. He goes from first to last and he doesn't even make the Olympic team. Reebok pulls the commercials and it's kind of like, what happened? And that I cut that article out of the Washington Post. I'm looking at it right now. And when I ran into Dave O'Brien, like 2000, I'm sorry, Dan O'Brien in 2010, he got a kick out of it because like who cuts out that article and save it? But up till that point, I just thought the best win. And that's kind of all there is. How does this happen? And so then I really started following his career. He went and saw somebody who helped him out with his focus, with his routines, with the self-talk that he has to have with himself. And that's where that was a hinge moment because it was like, that's what I want to do. I want to help athletes, coaches, and teams on their mental toughness. And then he wins gold at the next Olympics. And I kind of stayed in touch with him after that because that was a hinge moment. Like he had to go through that failure in order to reach that next success. And in his book, it's fascinating as well. We struggle with kind of the same demons, and it was, but that was a hinge moment, and that's where I kind of knew I was like, that's what I want to do. I'm going to work with athletes in that manner, and yeah, that's where that story took off.
Because you've worked with so many athletes, a lot of golfers, you've caddied what, like 20 like PGA tours?
Yeah, I've done. It's been quite a few years now since I've been out there on the bag, but yeah, I've caddied probably over 20 different events.
So golf is not my sport, right?
Mhm.
Okay. But I'll never forget. So I have a good friend of mine. He's a golfer. He has a golf podcast. He's obsessed with golf. So I started learning golf and I was like, okay, wow, this is such a mental game. I just couldn't believe it. I heard people talk about it. My brother goes out like every Saturday and I'd be like, why? Why do you torture yourself like this? It's like you go on one hole and it's amazing. I get all this confidence in the next hole. I could like barely hit the ball. It's a mess. And my dad watches golf all the time. But I remember when I was with a friend of mine and we were watching, and I forget what, I feel like golf's on all the time. So I was watching one of the tournaments, and this guy, all he needed to do was sink the putt. That's it. If he did, he would win the whole thing. And it was not a super hard putt for a professional golfer. And he hits it, and I'm watching it, and I'm like, how is golf so exciting? I realize it's actually fun to watch. And so I'm watching it, and he hits it, and it looks like it's going to go in. It's one of those, it just rings around the hole, misses it, loses first place, somebody else wins. And I have been thinking about it. This is like a couple of years ago, and it's still in my head. I can't imagine an athlete who is this close to getting first place, winning the gold. How do you mentally get over that and move on with your life, especially when it's so close?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot there. How do you move on from it? And this is probably the difficult part is it just can't define you as a person. If you let it define you as a person, you're going to be on a rough road because we lose more than we win, right? That's the part. And if it's like, I need that thing in order to be complete, it's going to leave us lacking. Like I already have to act as if you don't really need it. Like you've got nothing to prove, nothing to hide. Like that's the great piece to have. But it's difficult. That's the part where that's like that really inner work that needs to be done because yes, you want to do as best you can, but you can't have that as this is going to, even though it will change your life, it's not going to totally define it. Like other people can describe you, but only you can define you. And that's the part where you have to have something outside of your sport that's telling you exactly who you are rather than the sport that's going to be telling you. I think it's the only way to really get past that stuff. Because what happens then as well, and this is what's interesting, talking with coaches, with athletes that have won the Super Bowl and have lost the Super Bowl, which one do you think about? They don't hesitate. I think about the one that I've lost more. So the negative outweighs the positive. It's always going to hurt worse. That's why losing, they hate to lose more than they love to win. because losing hurts so much worse than winning actually feels good. Well, that becomes sort of like a zero sum game because the only thing then we're trying not to do is not feel bad. What's the real like joy and motivation behind it? And so it's got to be a love for the game. I love putting myself out there. And then the reality is this, and this is the difficult part, is if you make it to that level, everybody has missed that putt. Everybody has choked under pressure. I'm using the C word here, right? Everyone has choked. You don't get to that level without having gone through that. It happens all the time because of how difficult it is, because of the competition that's out there, and especially in golf. But everybody has choked. Everybody's missed the shot. That's the only way you get to really be that successful is if you willing to just keep putting yourself back out there, knowing that, hey, I was really close. I did so many things really well. I'm going to be able to focus, refocus, let this one go because I'm going to put myself back in those kind of situations. And then you have the foundation of who you are underneath. That's the way I think we get past that. But it's also just knowing that, look, man, that stuff's going to happen. You can't let other people then try and define you that is like your moment. Because I don't believe that's a moment. I just believe that's a setback. It's about the comeback.
Is there an activity or something that you recommend that your clients do? Like when you're talking to them and they're coming to you, and I can only imagine what your sessions are like with that level of success, those challenges that people are coming to you just as far as being mentally tough, especially after a loss. How do you refocus? What do you give them when they leave your office so that they can start practicing building up that mental toughness muscle?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's just look, the mental games, I say it's more about subtraction than it is addition. What I mean by that, I think it's about removing things more than it is adding things. Now, we do have to add things, but we just got to keep it simple. I think we have to keep it as simple as we can. So it's about removing that junk that just doesn't really help us. We think it might, but it really just doesn't help us in that journey. If there was so what I mean by that, it's really getting in touch with the breath, really getting in touch with the breathing is huge when it's going to come to your performance. Are we practicing that? Are we putting that into our preparation plan? Are we taking time throughout the day to really work on that focused breathing? Because then when it becomes the moment, it's too late to prepare. Like we have to be ready. And so there's focusing on the breathing is huge, right? If we got a refocus cue, are they keeping a notebook? Are they keeping a notebook of what I did well and what I learned? That's a huge part of every athlete I work with. They've got to be able to keep these notes. And then that's like part of the journey. But I mean, there's tons of different things. But I mean, I always look at breathing as foundation to it. You've got to have a good reflection piece. You have to have that part of you're able to reflect on your performance. And I always think my athletes do a good job of setting goals, but a lot of times they're just outcome goals. When it's like, what do you really want to focus on? You really want to focus on if we just look at the day, like what is the day? Well, we have these checklists that we want to do. It's great. How do you want to approach the day? Like who's it that you really want to be? And then that's more of like a process goal. And I want to show up today with enthusiasm unknown to mankind. Now that's a process goal. It's really tough to evaluate, but it doesn't make it any less important. We start incorporating this into daily life. And for instance is, do you do a good job of leaving work at work? If the work comes home with you all the time, it's tough to be able to shut that stuff off. And now that can bleed into this is who I am. And I'm guilty of it. I'm horrible at it. I need other people to coach me up on it. But like that's a big part of like pro athlete as well is you spend so much time in your sport, you have to be able to disconnect from it and get away from it, or it just comes all consuming. So I know I'm hitting you with a lot, but there's always tons there.
Well, you actually have this daily focus roadmap
Mm,
that people can get on your website. And it's so funny that you just ended with that tip because one of the things I wanted to ask you about was your roadmap is 7 super fast ways to win the day. And number 6 is have a hard stop.
hmm
And I was like looking at your roadmap. I'm like, ooh, well, that's a good one. I need that. What does that mean? And how can we actually practice that? Because I do feel like it is challenging to kind of let go of the day and reframe and come home and be able to not just think about work all the time.
Yeah. And that's where I look at it. I mean, if it's executives as well, I mean, if people have access to you at all times, that means when you're eating dinner, like people can ping you and get a hold of you. And there's no boundaries on that. And that will catch up to you at some point because you're not present. You're half in and half out. And it's the part about being a hard stop. It doesn't mean like you can't work at night. Like I love work, but when you, and I'm just using this as an example, when you get home, is there at least that time where, hey, I'm staying focused here on what I'm doing now, and I'll pick up work like later on. But if it bleeds through, we're not present. And that's the thing, right? It's like, do you really want to be thinking about work when you're at a movie or at dinner or hanging out? Um, that's the part where it's like, yeah, it's got to be a hard stop when it comes to it and be able to leave it there. And I've used that when I've written my books as well. But if there's no hard stop, we just keep pushing and pushing, and it's like there's no recovery there, and that's the part where I look at. I think a lot of people are driven. I don't think that's the part. I think it's like, is that recovery in there, and do we have that? Well, I can always elaborate on that, but like the recovery piece, I think is what sometimes lacks is we don't focus too much on that.
Yeah. That's big with athletes too, right? Some people have a harder time. If you're training, overtraining is a real thing. I've discovered that over the years, especially talking to different trainers. One of my friends, she's a macro coach and she does health and fitness and nutrition. There is this sense of you can overdo it. You have to be able to relax. You have to have those
Yeah,
days off. It's so funny. Some people, the challenge is them getting into the gym. And for other people, the challenge is to staying out of the gym and allowing themselves to
right.
actually relax.
So, Kate, like as well, if everybody's listening, I think everyone's an athlete too. Your office is just different. So I really believe that. I mean, my viewpoint in life is everyone is an athlete. Your office is just different because you're going to compete. We're competing against the most difficult opponent, our mind. We're going to have losses. Um, and the preparation, we prepare way more than we actually play. So if any of those components are in there, then you're an athlete. And that's why I think having that athletic mindset going into how we approach it is just crucial to recovery, to performance, to overall satisfaction, life, happiness. That's how I think we gotta approach it. Because and here's the way I look at it, like, when we compete, I think that's the best that life has to offer us. Now, I'm not talking about, like, the miracles about, like, having kids and stuff like that. I mean, those are miracles that happen. But when you get to toe the line and you've prepared for something and you're putting yourself out there where failure is an option, that can happen. I just don't think that life gets better than that. Those are the parts that I just think life is time ceases to exist. You're totally present. And I think that's the best feeling in life that we can have.
Much. First of all, I love that you say everyone's an athlete. That is amazing. I love that you said, oh my gosh, anyone that's listening, I feel like this is worth writing down. We prepare way more than we play. That is so true. And I feel like everyone, you want to be on the stage, you want to share the work, you want to share the book, but actually sitting down and writing the book, that takes a lot of time. Like that's what you're doing most of. And then it's out into the world. And it reminds me of Theodore Roosevelt's The Man in the Arena. When you're in the arena, you're doing the work. There's nothing like that. There's nothing like actually doing the work that we feel like we're supposed to be doing.
Hmm.
And we get so much fulfillment out of it.
And if you can just focus on that as the reward, then
Yes.
then winning and losing and what happens after is just the byproduct of the effort that you put into it.
I have a friend of mine. We talk all the time about our creative projects, and we constantly are telling each other the reward is the work. The reward is the work. And we have to remind ourselves because it's like there's always iterations. In fact, especially with writing, when I'm writing, even my team, they'll tease me because I'll write something and we're going to get out an email and then they'll be like, okay, here, review it. And if I'm like, guys, if I review it again, I'm going to change the whole thing. So let's just get it out because I want to keep on. You get better, like as you write, you get better. And then you look at it again and now it's a different perspective and I want to change it. But no, but we've got to get it out. Like at some point it has to be done. And that's really around the creative process, which I know you know because you've written 8 books. And I believe your latest book is I Can't Wait to Be Patient.
Hmm.
First of all, I love a great title. That is a great title. I Can't Wait to Be Patient. Why did you write this book? Why do we need to read it?
Yeah. The title came from when I was working with Scott Stallings. He was one of my favorite, one of my first and favorite PGA Tour pros, and we're training together. And he just says that line. He's like, "Yeah, man, we were talking about patience." He's like, "Yeah, man, can't wait to be patient." And I just held on to that line. It's just like pretty good line. 13 years later, then that became the book. And the reason why I wrote that book is because I think time is our most precious resource. We made the joke about, getting older, right? Well, today is the oldest we've ever been, or the youngest we've ever been. It's the oldest we've ever. No, let me fix that. Today is the oldest we've ever been, the youngest we're ever going to be. So I think time is just our most precious resource. So we're designed as people to get from point A to point B as fast as possible. Not many of us are putting in our GPS and we're going to take the slowest route to get there, right? That's how we're designed. So we romanticize speed. We love speed. Everything that we do in life, and especially with AI too, is designed to get there faster, make it quicker. And that's great. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. And the reason why this was such a difficult book to write is because I'm not contrary to any of that. Like, I'm designed to get from point A to point B as fast as possible. However, we missed the patience piece. We missed the part of rhythm is more important than speed. Like, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. So I wrote that one. It was just because I think we have this action bias that we need to do something is better than doing nothing. When you know what the reality is sometimes you don't need to do something, just sit there, like reflect on it, think about it. But too often when things aren't going well, we change and we start going a different direction, and that's not always the best. You'll see it in pro sports teams all the time. They fire the head coach because they got to do something. When really, is that the best option? Well, it does something. And that's the action bias that we have. So the fact of, look, we've got to remain patient. You got to stay committed to your plan and what you're doing. And we have to be urgent. Like, you have to approach. I say it in the book, like, there's no ease into a street fight. And my daughter plays tennis. I tell her, like, tennis is boxing at 90 feet. If you approach it any other way, you're going to get beat. And it took her a long time to get it until, like, she gets in these matches and like, yeah, man, you're throwing punches. But life is kind of like that as well sometimes. So there's no ease into a street fight. If you approach what you're doing with laissez-faire, like, just gonna kind of get there, I don't think that's the best approach, right? I think you have to approach it with a vigor and enthusiasm, like, this is what I'm going to achieve. However, once you have that, you can't approach everything in life with that same type of urgency, or else communication breaks down. People aren't going to connect with you. You put way too much pressure on yourself. When you have to be urgent towards the things that are important, and then the things that aren't important, that's the part where you got to remain patient. You got to just stay focused on the process. And like you said, right, the process is the reward. Um, I put it in the book, like, if you can wait, then you can win. We're all waiting, but we've lost that ability to wait, right? We kind of lose that piece. You've got to have hope. You have to have acceptance for how things are, not how we want them to be. You got to be able to wait without haste or restlessness. And I'm horrible at it. That's why I wrote the book, because, like, I want to get better at this stuff. And I don't want to just put too much fodder into it, but it's just like, patience is sort of the new mental toughness. If you show me somebody that can be patient, somebody that can just stay focused on the process, I will show you somebody that's mentally tough, because they're dialed in, they're focused. And farmers know this, right? As slow as smooth and smooth as fast. Farmers, you can't tell me a farmer doesn't work hard. I've never, ever met somebody that say, no, farmers don't work hard. They work hard, right? They put the hustle in hustle culture. But the farmers also realize that the day the seed is planted is not the day that's harvested. So when I would go to Tennessee and work the farm with my grandfather, I was like, man, dude, I don't want to do this work. I mean, this is 4 a.m. waking up, but he would always have time for coffee with his mates. I was like, well, how does that work? There was a rhythm throughout the day. Yeah, man, they worked hard, but they knew what the rhythm was. And that's the part where I felt it was important to write. It was like, speed's great, love it, but what's the rhythm that we're getting there? Because if you want to get there fast, you can go alone, but if you want to get far, like, you got to go together. So those were a couple of the sound bites from it.
Ugh. What an important message, especially today. It's so interesting how, and I guess this is probably a lot more, being able to see people through social media and seeing the highlight reels of people, and it looks as though everyone's going so fast. It looks like everyone's achieving all these things and doing all these things and putting out all this content and creating all this work. And especially when I do think about creative work like podcasts and books and articles and people getting things out, I feel like sometimes I'll be working on something and I'll sit down to work on it and I'll think, "Oh, it has to go out. Sat down, I created it, it has to go out now." No, it doesn't. There's a space for chill, take a step back, let it be, give it some space and some time and some room, and then come back to it. And I feel like there is this sense of urgency. And to your point with AI, I do feel like it almost feels a little bit, if you allow yourself to give into it, you can get caught up in it.
Mhm.
And so, what I really appreciate your message and even hearing you, first of all, I love that you say that you have a challenge with it because it feels like you don't. So, I'm glad that we all can kind of
I'm so
be
bad at it.
challenged by it.
So bad at it. I feel sometimes like, yeah, at my best, I'm just a hypocrite, right? I'm like, I just gotta remind myself, and it's like, "Look, man, we're gonna get there, just relax."
Yeah. So, Matthew Kelly, who has written 40 plus books, and one of his newest books is called Slowing Down to the Speed of Joy, another great title. And I think that there's something to be said about kind of going back to what we originally talked about. To me, your body of work is a reflection of patience and allowing yourself to try all these things and share the work, share the books, build this career and really stay focused on mental toughness. In fact, you talked to someone on one of your episodes, and I don't remember his name, but I think he caddied for Ricky Fowler or
Oh, that was
something.
Joe Scovern. Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, him. And I remember you had asked him a question about something about what would you do differently? And he said something around if he was talking just about golf, he might have focused a little bit more on golf instead of football and some of the other sports that he was involved
Right.
in, because when all the pro golfers were golfing year round, he was kind of taking some time off. So I'm curious your thoughts on focus versus a little bit more broad when it comes to your interests and the body of work that you're creating.
Yeah, that's a good one. So Joe Scovern's always been a really good friend of mine. He's a great guy. So I'm a big Bob Dylan fan, and I've always liked Bob Dylan. Um, and Bob Dylan would recreate himself all the time. Like he was coming out with John Wesley Harding, which is kind of like a country album, when the Beatles are doing Sergeant Pepper's Band, right? When Led Zeppelin's coming out with their hard rock. Like he was a folk singer that went rock. Like you don't do that. You know what I mean? Like you stay in your lane, you stay in folk music. And I tell my daughter this, and I'm just like, the reason why you know Bob Dylan's name now is because he was always reinventing himself. And so one thing I like to talk about is like stepping into the next. And when we step into the next, that means you've got to be able to embrace what that unknown is. You have to know what your core values are and what you're good at. But stepping in the next, it is going to be scary and it's not always comfortable. But are we looking at that as like a threat, or is that going to be a challenge? Is that going to be an opportunity? What possibilities are out there? And at the same time, do we really stay? And this is why it's difficult, right? Because it could be like most of my answers now are like, it depends. And I always hated like being in the middle of the road, but I feel like now, like we're so much either on one side or the other that kind of being in the middle is now it's actually good, right? The pendulum just keeps swinging. So with that said, like my daughter also says, "Dad, like you're great at everything." And I tell her, and I said, "No, like I'm good at everything. Like and I'm not bragging at all, right? Like, yeah, I can do something a couple times and I can get it. Like there's not too many things like I can't do. And if I can't do it, it's because I just didn't like it, right? I didn't want to do racquetball. But um, and I tell her, I said, no, that is good at everything. And the reason why is because I loved and I was fascinated by just not being horrible at things. I didn't want to be the worst person out there. So I would get good enough that I kind of would check that box in terms of accomplishment and I want to move on. So like I don't like riding the bike, so I don't really do Ironmans anymore. I like doing ultras. I like, I've got a 100K that's coming up this weekend. I've got a last man standing coming up this fall. I like doing ultra marathons. And so that's real singular focused. And I just say, like, look, when it comes to this, we just have to, one way or another, we got to be constantly reinventing ourselves and getting better at it. I don't think that means we have to totally step out of our lane in terms of what our passion is, but that's how I just think we just like keep getting better that way, constantly refining it, getting better. So that's painting like a broad stroke. Um, and it kind of just depends, right? Depends on what your passion is. If you really want to just stay, if you want to reach a certain levels, um, I would mostly just say sports, there becomes a point where it's like you just have to like focus on that. However, that said, I tell my athletes, if you're not taking scheduled time off, you're going to take unscheduled time off. And it's back to that original point we were talking about. If you're not scheduling your breaks or your recovery, you're going to run yourself down to the ground, and then it's going to take longer. Like you're either going to get injured, something's going to happen, and your heart's not going to be in the training. If your heart's not in it, it's not going to be good training. I know it's sort of a roundabout answer there, Kate, to kind of answer it, but gave a couple examples. So I guess it depends, right? It just depends on what drives you. My son is singular focused on golf because he loves golf. And I tell him, I said, look, I love the mental game, but there's a width, right? There's a breadth to the mental game. Golf's very, very focused. I wish I loved something as much as you love golf because it's just what he loves. He loves to do it. So he has to be doing other things, of course, but that's what he's always going to be getting back to. And that's not that's driven by him. It's not driven by anybody else. So that's the key.
Yeah. That's interesting because I think sometimes when I see someone who's been super, super niche in their business, in their creativity, in their work, I almost feel like, oh, I kind of wish I had that. But also, I love doing all the things that I've done. And even when I think back in high school, my sister, volleyball. She was a volleyball player. She trained in volleyball. They were the best. Their team won all the championships. She got a full scholarship to go play in college. That was her focus. Me, I played basketball and I was a high jumper and I was on the swim team and then I was on the dance team and I just loved popping around to different sports. I was good at all of them except for the dance team. I was good. I was good in all of them, but not I wasn't getting a scholarship. So I think it's interesting how it does. I hate the answer it depends, but I also get the answer it
Yeah.
depends.
And this is what the difficult part is like, you know, especially on that sports realm, like we're trying to have them excel at something and they do. And then, but here's the real kiss of death is why do you play? And if they come back with, I'm good at it will never ever work because they're going to reach that certain point. Maybe it's in college where, look, I did all this stuff because I wanted like this scholarship and I got it and I reached that mountaintop and now I'm off that mountaintop and like I really don't love it. Well, now you're in a really tough position because now you're entrapped. Now you're good at something that you don't love. That's a real tough spot to be in because now you really don't have options. And I've worked with athletes there that they don't have the love for it. They have to find another why, but they're good at what they do. It doesn't work. It just has to be, I think, in your soul that this is what I want to do because I love it. No other reason. Then you can be successful at it.
Yeah. I think you can feel that in certain people. When I think about some of even just some of the creatives that I follow online, you can tell they have a love of the craft. They have a love of writing. They have a love of art or music. It's just in their soul, and that's part of why they do what they do, and you can feel it. You can just feel it. I'm curious
Agreed.
because you've written 8 books. Obviously, there is some mental toughness when it comes to sitting down and having the discipline of writing. Do you have a writing process? Was it easier to write book 8 than it was book 1? Tell us a little bit about that.
You would think it was easier. And that's what I always ask myself, Rob, how do you still struggle with this? Because you've done this, you know what the process is. How is this book is way harder than what you did before? And part of it is I don't like repeating myself. So I need to find a different way, a different avenue in, like another way to say this. Because if I find myself that repeating it, like it's just me, right? It's like I just don't want to hear that. I've already seen that movie, man. What else? Um, so that's why it doesn't really get easier. My process has been very simple. I'm not saying this is the best way, but my process was when I'm writing the book is to write for 1 hour every day. And if I write for 1 hour every day, um, then I'm making progress. I'm leaving myself a good stopping point, and then it just sort of like unfolds that way. I don't go any longer because I can't do it. And I approach everything kind of like in life, like that, like a workout, like every workout ends. So even if it's a 4 hour run, I know that's going to end. Same thing with like writing a book. It's really staying focused on 1 hour every day. Some of these days I can get a paragraph. Sometimes I get a couple pages. Sometimes it's a sentence, but it'll take me down these routes of what I really love doing is I love learning, and I want to learn more about, well, like what are these components of patience, right? What are these components of resiliency? Like what is it about Puke and Rally that is different from every other book that's going to be out there? And then when I'm going down those routes, like I like that learning part. I like being able to teach myself and then be able to put it in a in a way that is consumable and people can just like, yeah, absolutely. So I always write airplane books. I want somebody to get on the airplane from West Palm Beach to Chicago and they're done the book. Um, I'm not a thinking fast and thinking slow. Like I'm not that smart. I got to keep it simple, man. And that's how I've always tried to like write my books. But that's always been the style, just 1 hour every day. Oh, I also
All
say
right.
this. Since you'll have creatives that are on there, I've always held on to this. There is no good writing. There's only good rewriting. So when I get back and I'm looking at something like that is absolute, like, excuse my language, but like that I don't even know what you're saying here. Like I need to give myself a little bit of grace and say, Rob, remember, there's no good writing, there's good rewriting. And that's the part that's true, right? It's not like, man, you write it and oh, there it is. The birds then come out of the closet and the trumpets are erupting. Like, that's not it. It's just good rewriting. And then it's just like every sentence, just not trying to waste any fodder on that. And every sentence really has like a point. That's what I get back to. Have you heard that one before? Do you like that?
Love that. And it's funny because I love studying writers. When I started reading a lot of writing craft books, that's one of the things that they talk about is getting out what some call it the vomit draft, which is basically just throwing it up on the page. It's not supposed to look pretty. In fact, when you do go back to it and you're like, what is this? This is not usable, but it is in some way. And how so much of writing is editing. I love that quote from Verlin Klinkenberg has a book called Several Short Sentences About Writing. And he says something in there around it's important to know what you're trying to say, but it's essential to know what you've actually said or something like that. I'm kind of butchering the quote, but
Mhm.
it's something around that. And so I think the only way for us to really get to the point, like you said, where there's no fluff and it really is just matter of fact, and this is what I want people to hear and get and take away from it. That's a lot of writing. It takes people. I mean, you hear people that say they've written 100,000 words just to get the 30,000 word book or whatever it is.
Right.
So it does take some time, but that's awesome that you've continued to write the books. And I have heard that you would think it was easier as you go, but every writer I feel like says the same thing. They're
Do
like,
they
yeah,
really?
yeah.
Really?
Oh yeah. One of my mentors, one of the things he said was, you would think it would be easier to write the book. It's not. And part of it is because once you put books out in the world and now people have read them and they like them, there's a higher bar. Like
Hmm.
the first book you put out, you're like, you don't know if it's going to do anything. Is it going to be good? Are people going to like it? And then if they do like it, now they have an expectation. So now you're writing through an expectation. And the more books that you write, same kind of thing. But I do think it's interesting that you don't want to say that you actually voice that you don't want to say the same thing, because I do think that there are a lot of authors who they have one topic, like John Maxwell. How many books has he written? What, like 80 books on leadership? How many ways can you talk about leadership?
Right.
But he clearly came up with lots of different ways, but obviously there are certain things he's continuing to say throughout his book.
Yeah.
So it's an
I didn't
interesting.
know other authors struggled with that. I really thought I was the only one.
Oh, listen, all you need to do is pick up a craft book and you will see you're not the only one. On Writing by Stephen King is a great book. You hear a little bit about his backstory too and everything, which is really good. But no, Rob, don't worry, you're not alone. Writers all struggle with.
The one part too is like I don't wanna take the thought from somebody else and then just pawn it off on my own. I'm really, really hyper aware of that. And like to make sure if I'm taking this thought, man, to spin it and be able to approach it from a different angle. That's the part too, where it's just like, man, really just want to make sure this is in my own voice and how I would say it. I think that's why it gets difficult as well.
That is a challenge, especially because, I mean, look, there's no new ideas, right? There's no new ideas of books. People have written about them for hundreds of years, but you might be writing a book around habits. Well, James Clear has a massive best-selling book, Atomic Habits, but that's not to say that someone else shouldn't write a book about habits. They will say it in a different way, and it might resonate with someone. But I do think that that can be challenging. A book that would be that actually I love that helps with this is by Austin Kleon called Steal Like an Artist.
Hmm. I've
And
heard that.
that book
Yeah.
Oh, he is absolutely one of my favorite authors, and that book is so important because he really talks about that. He's like, "You're not stealing from someone, you're taking all of the collection of all the ideas, all the things that you've read, learned, experienced, and then putting it in your own words." So, it might feel like somebody else's ideas kind of, because they kind of are,
Yeah.
but you're turning them into something. So, it's a beautiful book, and I think it does help people when they think about their creative process and not wanting to steal from other people.
Yeah. Right.
So
Yeah. Thank you.
all right, Rob, I feel like I could talk to you forever. You're
Yeah. We're just
so
getting
like, there's
started,
so
right?
many. I know, right? This could go on for forever and ever. And you're running a freaking 10K, which that's like a whole
100,
other
100K.
100K. That's what I mean. 100. Like, who does that? Why would you do that to yourself?
So I've got the big race that's coming up. I mean, this is a training race. So the big race is in September. It's a last man standing. It's at the top of every hour. You need to be in the starting grid and you run it's a 4 mile loop. So in 24 hours time, you'll have 100 miles. That's why a lot of people do this one, but it goes until there's just one finisher left. And I want to put forth just a full effort into it. So everything that I'm doing, to how well I can do, because you don't need to be the fastest. You just can't quit, because there's a lot of people that are faster, but boy, the one thing I'm good at is just not quitting. So this race coming up, the 100K, is partly training for that, but I like freedom. Freedom was a big core value of mine, and there's nothing more free than to be running at midnight and just out there in the woods and doing stuff that's difficult. I like that. So that's where you got to be a little bit off. I mean, I think I'm a little bit off when it comes to that, but that really just appeals to me because I'm like, Rob, do you want to go like run 100K in the woods at night? Yes. Yeah. Let's, like, when are we going? That attracts me to it. That turns me on. So that's kind of like why I'm doing it. Part of the why.
Oh my gosh. Well, have fun.
Yeah.
That sounds crazy. Although it does, I feel like an experience like that does seem really cool. And especially after the fact, just to know that you've done it. That's why I feel like with my workouts, I'm always, okay, what can I be building up to? What can I be working towards? Because there's something really exciting about, oh, how many push-ups or how many pull-ups can I do? Or a specific exercise that I can't really do. Even when I started doing Pilates, Rob, I thought it was going to be so easy. I'm like, Psh, Pilates looks so
Right.
simple. And then I do it and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is using such different muscles than I've been used to using. And then I got excited to get better in that regard because it was a whole different, I'm used to just like weight training and now I'm doing Pilates and I thought, "Oh, this is so cool. I have all new goals on what I can be able to do movement wise."
See, you're great at stepping in the next, right? Like that's the key. Like you keep switching it up one way or another, and then we never get old
Yeah.
and we'll never die.
Yes. We will never get old.
Okay. Never die.
All right, Rob, I always ask my guests one last question. What activity can we do in 10 minutes or less to live a more creative life?
So I was thinking about that question and I kind of know my answer. What's the best answer you've gotten so far though? I'll answer it, but like what's one that you've really
What's
liked?
what's the best answer? Oh my gosh, that's a good question. Um, I feel like a lot of people have said very similar things, and I'm trying to think if somebody has really stood out and said something that I don't. I will say one of my guests said something that was new. A lot of people say journaling, taking a walk. You know what I thought was fun? Someone said to go outside and take a picture. Go outside, find something to take a picture of, and then make it black and white.
Oh, good one.
And I thought that was a cool exercise to just, like, go and find something you wanna take a picture of and turn it into black and white. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, that is a good one. What was your answer?
Oh, geez. I don't ever answer my own
You
question.
don't? Yeah, I know, right? You're on the right side. Only thing I could get back to in, like, in 10 minutes, like, um, I kept going back to the exercise piece, so, like, do something to exhaustion, see how many sit-ups you can do, like, in 10 minutes, right? Set a bar, like, how many push-ups can you do in 10 minutes? Because 'Cause you're gonna find out, like, how fast you fatigue, and if you can do 1 minute of straight push-ups, like, that's hard, man. And so my answer was, in thinking about this, is do something that reveals the power of time, that gives you the perspective of time. And what I mean by that is, like, if you try doing push-ups, see how many push-ups you can do in 10 minutes, you're gonna see how long 10 minutes is. And it's kinda like that's the relativity, right? See how many squats you can do in 10 minutes. Mm, see how many sit-ups you can do in 10 minutes. Once you start, then you realize, like, how long 10 minutes is, right? Because too often, like, oh, 30 minutes or 10 minutes, that's not a lot of time. Is it really? Try holding a plank for 10 minutes and see how well you do, right? Try sprinting for 10 minutes. So anything, I just think anything that is going to give you the perspective of time in that 10 minutes is huge. And then we realize how long that is. And then when you can get into facts and when you can do things in life where time then becomes irrelevant, that's, I think, the beauty of it. I think that's the beauty of sports. I think that's the beauty of being in the moment. When we talk about mindfulness, time is irrelevant. You're not focused on anything else. That's the best part that life has to offer. That's my answer. Do something
I
hard
love
for 10 minutes.
that.
You
I
do?
love that. In fact, I do. In fact, I feel like right when you said, "Try doing a plank for 10 minutes and see if you could do it," I was like, "Oh, that sounds horrible. I'm gonna try it.
Yeah. Right.
I'm gonna see how long I can last." And now immediately my goal went immediately my brain went, "Okay, I'm gonna see how long I can go today, and then I'm gonna build up to 10 minutes." I don't know if I could hold a plank for 10 minutes.
Yeah, it's the thing too, right? Like good form with it. And yeah, it's tough, man.
Well,
I
I'll
don't even,
find out. I'll let
yeah.
you know.
But anything that we work at, we get better at. It's like, is the why strong enough that I want to hold a plank for 10 minutes? If the why's there, then we can achieve it. Absolutely, you can do it. I tell
Yeah.
people this too. It's like, oh man, I could never run 100K or I can never run a marathon. Let's just say that, never run a marathon. Because people say life isn't a sprint, it's a marathon. Look, I totally disagree with that. I think life is way harder than a marathon, way harder. Because a marathon, you can do it in a few hours, right? Say how 7 hours? I mean, that's a pretty slow marathon. You could do it. People will say, oh, I can never do that. Well, let's say that if you didn't finish this race, if you didn't run 26 miles, then your family would be killed. Do you think you could do it then? All right, well, what's it getting back to? How bad do you want it? So what you're really saying is you don't want to put forth the effort to it. Okay, that's cool. That's not in the goal, but don't say you can't do it because you can. If the why is strong
Yeah.
enough, if you want it bad enough, you can do that.
Yeah.
Not to end on a downer or anything, but that part's true. If you're telling me that if you didn't, then you would die, you'd finish it.
Yeah. It's the why, it's your priority. That's the thing too. What's the priority? For me, I love fitness and I love with lifting weights and Pilates and taking walks and I love challenging myself, but I have no interest of running a marathon.
Right.
I just have no interest of it.
Yep.
And that's okay. Now my friends that do, they try to convince me. I'm like, "You don't have to try to convince me. I just don't want I've literally no interest in running.
Yes.
I will walk. I will walk 100K. Like, I would love to go out in nature and walk and take hikes and everything, but I just have no interest in it. But one day, maybe I will. I doubt it. But what?
No, I get it. I get it. But see, and that's the thing though, right? You know in your heart of hearts that if it was something you want to do, you could.
Yes.
You're not going to be one of the people that be like, "Oh, I can never do that." Yeah.
No. Oh, no, I know I could run a marathon 100%. I also know that if I would that I would be the person that would be excited about I wanna be excited about the training. I get excited knowing I'm going to train for something. I would wanna know the steps. How many miles should I run the first day, the first week, second week, third because I know that there's a lot of processes behind how do you do Ironman? How do you do CrossFit competitions? How do you strategize to be able to run 100K? To me, it is the idea of other people have done it. How did they do it? What are the best ways to do it so that you don't hurt yourself? Anyway, all right. Okay, Rob. Oh my gosh, we got to go. I feel like again, we're new friends. So this is
Indeed.
we'll
Thank you.
we'll stay connected. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I took so many notes. There's so many little sound bites that I feel like were really helpful for the listeners. And if you are listening and you want to hear more from Rob, you can check out his podcast, Mental Toughness Podcast. You have some really great guests. And before we hit record, I was asking if Rob ever does solo episodes, which he does not yet, but maybe that'll be a fun little challenge for you, Rob.
Once you sign up for that marathon, maybe I will. No, I'm just kidding.
We'll see which one of those will come first. I hope you got at least one idea, one takeaway, one piece of inspiration to move you forward in your creative projects. There was so much goodness in this episode. Rob is such an interesting person doing so many interesting things from the work he gets to do with athletes to executives, and he's writing books and he's running 100Ks. That's just wild. I really did take so many notes. I feel like this idea of mental toughness is so important in our lives as we work through anything, whether it's a creative project or a family challenge or something that you're going through. We have to be mentally tough in order to get up and do the work. Like we talked about, the reward is the work. Some of the things that I really appreciated was that distinction between focus and refocus, how important that is. I love that he talked about how one failure can't define you. Like you can't let those failures in life define who you are. This is why it's so important for us to have this bigger idea of who we are and who we're becoming. And it's not this one moment in time, this one failure, this one thing that happened to us. It's this collection of what those things have taught us, how we decide to move forward when we decide to actually get up and try again and continue to go. And that stuff matters. Those are the things that matters. It's who we are, who we become, not just this one defining moment in our lives. So many great things came out of this episode. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I do. And if you want to find out more about him, go check out his website, drrobbell.com. He shares lots of great resources over there, including his free daily focus roadmap that you can get by heading over to his website. You can also find him on social media and definitely connect with him. He's got 8 great books to choose from, as well as his podcast. So I hope that you dig into a little bit more of his content as he can help you become more mentally tough. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you. And until next time, go create something.